This has been on my mind for a while. I want to talk about AI and its roles in men's employment and security. I'll do this first by outlining some recent trends, using my personal experiences and examples of both detriments and benefits of large language models. Also, how increased use of AI hits men differently and using it as leverage. Let me just say as an outset, I don't work in tech. I don't work in economy. I'm not an economist. My context here is going to be through men's issues, a little bit of data, some context, and that's it. Your experience with AI, your understanding of it may be different than mine. This is my take. Now, as I mentioned, I've been waiting to cover this topic for a while, and certain recent events have put it at the top of my list. If you're new here, my name is Todd. I'm an author, a research psychologist, and an advocate for men. If you like these types of male-specific conversations, you're in the right place, and I hope you'll come back. Let's start with a few current AI marketplace trends. Goldman Sachs estimated recently that shifts in workflow from generative AI could impact the equivalent of 300 million full-time jobs globally. OpenAI-linked researchers also estimated that around 80% of the U.S. workforce could have at least 10% of their tasks affected by large language models, while about 19% of workers could see at least half of their tasks affected. In 2024, Microsoft's Work Trend Index reported that 75% of global knowledge workers were already using generative AI at work. So we're not talking about a science fiction debate about robots replacing humans like we were in the 80s or the 90s. This is here. It's now. And it's already inside companies that are increasing their workflow, a lot of them drafting forecast reports in just minutes and cleaning up dozens of chaotic spreadsheets into a single reliable data list of data charts. And while it's likely to affect nearly every job in the next coming years, it may be especially close for men who built their professions using their brains. For those of us whose work or knowledge that we spent decades learning and now have jobs that are tied to things like writing, analyzing, researching, or interpreting information, AI does not have to replace your entire job to change your future. It only has to reduce the number of people that are needed to do that work and how many hours the work takes. Now, before I go any further, I should explain why I mentioned earlier that this topic is not theoretical for me. One of the major reasons I started this channel 1 year ago was to protect myself if my employment were ever affected. I realized the importance and reality of employment risks. In fact, just over a week ago, maybe close to 2 weeks ago, I started making plans for this channel's upcoming second year and how to expand my reach by bringing more information and resources to more men. As fate would have it, just a few days ago, in fact, I was let go after my position was eliminated for reasons like overlapping responsibilities, reduced manual workload, process automation, data integration systems, and other technology solutions that made multiple positions less necessary. The kind of work that I did in higher education is exactly the kind of work that people used to think was safe because it relied on our brains and many, many years of expertise. We're the only people that could offer that at that time. A lot of us built our careers around that mindset. But what I want to acknowledge is the reality that men who depend on their brains and on their employer, on a single employer, and a narrow definition of professional value may be at more risk than they realize. If, like me, your income, identity, and usefulness are all tied to work that can be automated, streamlined, or to other people's jobs, and then taken away overnight, then the threat is more than just the potential of unemployment. I promise that this discussion is not all doom scrolling, so bear with me here. But I do believe that the AI conversation may hit harder and different for men. For guys who are expected to be providers, work is more than just a means to pay bills. It's one of the main ways that we can still prove our utility and our competence. It's our positive addition to society. Now, that may sound old-fashioned to some of the younger guys, but it's still true in practice. Women and liberals will still say that traditional masculinity is toxic, but the truth is that men are always and still judged heavily by what they provide. So when work becomes unstable, it affects his identity, his confidence, social status, and whether he matters. As an example, this 2021 article in American Sociological Review reported that men's employment is linked to higher risk of separation in heterosexual couples, and also that male breadwinner expectations help explain that relationship. In other words, even when people claim the old provider model is outdated, men's provision is still very important. A man losing work can become evidence, fairly or unfairly, that he is less stable, less attractive, and less valuable. And that's the part of the conversation that's not included in AI discussion and discourse today. If AI jeopardizes men's employment, it's doing a lot more than consolidating spreadsheets and summarizing 100-page reports in seconds. It's threatening one of the few remaining socially approved ways that men are allowed to demonstrate their worth and their value. Now let's talk about who may be most at risk. Again, I am not an economist. I'm just giving social perspective, a little bit of data, and a little bit of psychology here. The biggest immediate danger may not be that AI affects or eliminates every white-collar job. That's the dramatic version, but I think it's far too simple. The more realistic danger may be that AI starts by thinning out the bottom of the ladder. By that I mean entry-level workers, or maybe the ones that just have the least amount of seniority, like I did with only 5 years in my recent position. Now, I don't have any evidence to support this, and I'm sure we'll get a lot more national data on this in the coming years. But men who are perhaps easiest to replace are the ones who draft the first report or they run basic analyses without any real decision-making authority. And that's why it's significant beyond job type. It's also job status and time there. And I think that that's a concern that's already showing up in some data. For example, in late 2025, Stanford Digital Economy Lab researchers found that since the widespread adoption of generative AI, early career workers aged 22 to 25 in the most AI-exposed occupations experienced a 16% relative decline in employment even after controlling for some factors. So when people say that AI won't replace experienced workers, they may be right. But that misses, I think, a deeper problem. Men with 20 or 30 years of experience don't appear out of nowhere. They're built over decades through years of commitment, growth, responsibility, and even learning from their failures along the way. They know how to anticipate and project in their fields without AI. So if AI moves too many of those early career men, removes them, then we lose the process that turns inexperienced men into those of competence. Now here's the part that keeps this from becoming another doom video. AI is not just a threat. It can also be used for leverage, especially for men who are willing to learn, experiment, and build outside of the narrow parameters of their current job descriptions. Much of the same technology that employers are using to reduce workforce is available to us right now in our homes. It can help write better, research faster, sharpen underutilized or unknown skills, and generate competitive business ideas. The important part is that men can get simple, practical leverage. They can get more output or knowledge with limited time and ways to compete without a staff or permissions from slimy supervisors who intentionally try to keep them down. And that's exactly where I think leaning into AI is a great way to resolve some of these issues. Used correctly, AI can help a guy do much more than ever. Hell, as an example, I had ChatGPT work up this floor plan and mock image of a small bathroom remodel for me just a few weeks ago in my condo right here. And I know nothing, absolutely nothing, about how to do any of it. From drawing up a great-looking floor plan to the interior design and pricing it out, I got all of those answers from start to finish in about 2 hours. That's the power of what's available for guys who are willing to lean into AI. And honestly, that applies for this channel too. It would be much more challenging to fully research, organize, summarize, and distribute so much in-depth content that I place and at the pace that I do without using AI as some part of my workflow. The curiosity and questions are all mine. AI can't do any of that for me. It can't think for me. It can't anticipate for me. I still choose the topics, I find the sources, and I decide how I want to build my arguments when I make videos. I record it, I edit it, I render it, and I post it all. And I take responsibility for the final project. None of it is automated. But the benefit I get is reducing the 20 hours it would normally take me to organize and produce a deep dive video to 6 or 8 hours, which means I can do more of it to bring more relevant, sophisticated content to you and thousands of other men. There's no way I could organize as quickly if I weren't using it. Whether it's doing services like consulting for people or brainstorming other ways to start or grow a viable business, there are also many benefits for guys who have an employer and a willingness to be more productive at work. As an example, the St. Louis Fed reported that generative AI users saved an average of 5.4% of work hours, which equals about 2.2 hours per week for someone that's working 40 hours. Now, I realize that may not sound life-changing until you think about someone who's under pressure. 2 hours a week can mean more job searching, skill building, even client outreach, business planning, or increased output around the house, whatever it is. And gains are not limited to experienced workers. Research in this 2023 working paper from the National Bureau of Economic Research reported that access to generative AI assistants increased productivity among customer support agents by about 14% on average, with the biggest gains for novice and low-skilled workers. So the positive message is not that AI will save every man. Let me be clear, it will not. It's not going to magically create discipline, judgment, curiosity, or ambition in guys. You still got to want it. But it can multiply those traits if you already have or are willing to build them. So this is the takeaway that I want to make today. The real divide will not be between men and machines. It will be between passive men and adaptive men. Passive guys will wait for their employer to train them and to teach them how to improve. Adaptive men say, screw that, and they start applying the benefits of AI before their HR termination meeting is scheduled. Passive men will use AI to avoid thinking or as a way to simply be a good little boy and increase their work output while hoping to keep their same salary or even their jobs. The adaptive ones will use AI to think harder and faster, and with better self-improvement structures. So for men, I think there's a simple lesson here. Use it to become sharper in ways that are in your own best interest, not to outsource your job to someone else. So what to do now? First, if you're in a tricky spot in your employment, please try not to panic. Determine if or how AI might help or hurt you. And don't look at AI as if it's going to either rescue you or clobber you. As a balance, try to look hard at your own work, whether it's for yourself or an employer, and separate what is routine from what's valuable. If much of your job is built around basic skills like summarizing, drafting, or scheduling, then assume that at least some of your work is exposed. Spend some time thinking about and researching what that means for you specifically and how it relates to the larger job market that you're in and AI's role in it. Don't ask whether AI can do your job. Assume that it can do at least part of it. But ask which parts of your job AI can weaken, speed up, cheapen, or make less dependent on you or anyone else. I also think that men should use AI to build more independence, not just to become more efficient employees. Use it to learn a marketable skill, perhaps something entirely new. And even more importantly, at least in my opinion, use it to research a field or business before you spend money or time training or deciding what type of career you want. Use it to outline a viable side business or to test an idea before investing. The goal is not to become dependent on AI for your livelihood or to lose your livelihood to it, but to become a more useful, adaptable man who is harder to contend with. So tell us about your experience and anything that you've started to do to prepare for potential changes in your own job. These are the types of conversations that just might really help other guys, and I'm sure they'll appreciate your comments. Cheers, fellas. Thanks for sticking around, and I'll be back soon.